as a kid, I moved around quite a bit. I was an Army brat, but not really. Both of my parents served, but my grandparents raised me because my mom was in Germany and didn't want to take me to Germany as a baby. So I was a partial Army brat, if that makes any sense. But I grew up in northern Jersey. I'm not going to tell you what kind of fan I am because the room might hate me. But go Eagles, if that helps. So I ended up in Virginia. Went to high school in Virginia, played sports, knew I was going to college. I wanted to be the first in my family to graduate. My mom and her sisters all went, none of them graduated, they had children, left college. So I had some sort of a goal, but then I said, how am I going to pay for this? And how can I pay for this on my own without begging my parents for money every week as being a struggling college student? So I signed for the National Guard in Virginia. So my plan was to do my 6 years in the Guard. Once I get out of the Guard, I would go active duty and jump out of airplanes.
Bad idea.
You know, when you're 17 and 18 and kind of slightly stupid, you don't really think that out. But that was the plan I had for myself. So everything was working out great, and then 9/11 happened. I was in college in my dorm room. My roommate actually woke me up, like shaking me, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? And she's like, look up at the TV, 9/11. One of those things that, for all of us, we can probably remember exactly where we were that day. So I never did think that I would go to Afghanistan or Iraq or any place in the Middle East, because I was in the National Guard. Okay, so the National Guard and Reserves typically go first. They go before active duty, so I was like, wow, what, I should have went active duty first and did college later. Well, anyway, we're in formation, and they say, if we call your name, come to this line. If we don't call your name, stand still. So we're all looking at each other like, what is going on? My name got called. My cousin's name got called, and she looked at me and she said, I hate you for making me sign the line with you. If we're going overseas, I'm gonna kill you. So I'm like, okay, I have to watch the Iraqis and I have to watch my cousin, like who's gonna get to me first? But yeah, we were in the line to go. So everybody kind of was in panic mode because they said, for all of you that are going overseas, call your family right now. We give you 2 phone calls, but you can't go home. So I'm like, well, what does that mean? I'm in college. Like, what does that mean? Have somebody withdraw you. You can't leave. You're activated. That's it. So I make my 2 calls. My boyfriend, who's now my husband, was in Penn State. And I called my mom, who could call her million brothers and sisters, and explain to them what was going on. My cousin did the same thing. She called her husband and called her side of the family. Well, they rushed and they gave us a ceremony, like a going away kind of dinner, where we had 2 days to get our families to come down to Virginia to kind of send us off. My poor boyfriend had to drive from Penn State to middle of nowhere, Rocky Mount, Virginia, in a snowstorm, because he didn't know if I would come home or not, or what the story was going to be. He made it. He was upset when he got there, but he made it. And it was kind of like, that's it. So we ship off to Fort Eustis. That became our base. We get prepared to go. And they say, hey, you guys are going to Turkey. So we're like, yeah, everybody's ready to party. We're hugging and kissing. We're going to smoke hookah. This is going to be great. Fast forward a month later, nope, you're going to Iraq. We're like, what happened to Turkey? Why is that off the menu now? We want to go to Turkey. So we get to Kuwait, and it's pretty surreal. It's hot, and it's hot, and it's just sand and hot, and sand and hot, and soldiers running around everywhere, and sandstorms that hurt like hell when they hit you. But they fed us pretty well for like the first 3 days, and then they pushed us forward to the land of Iraq. The experience was a gift and a curse. You live on pins and needles. As a truck driver, we were constantly on the road. We would get a mission, we go that way, we spend a night, we come right back. And that's how they ran us. Our unit did well over 1 million miles in a year. Well, technically less than a year. 1 million miles, over 1 million miles. And luckily for us, we had no casualties. We lost one truck to an IED explosion, and the 2 personnel in the truck had shrapnel, one a little more major than the other, sent him to Germany. He came back in 3 weeks, but we had 0 casualties. And one story I can really remember from running those missions back and forth was we went to a fueling station that was ran by the Puerto Rican National Guard. They had Puerto Rican flags everywhere. My husband's Puerto Rican. They're very proud people. And, we're fueling up and they got music playing and I'm like, wow, this is a party. Like, this is great. And everything went well. They fueled us all and it was time for us to leave. We pull out and all we hear is boom, boom, bang, bang. And you look in your rearview mirrors, all you see is smoke. And we're like, oh my God, they got bombed. Can we help? And they're like, nope, you have precious cargo. You have to keep going. So that's one of the things I have to live with as a soldier, a little bit of that guilt. Could we have turned around and helped, or do we follow orders and keep going and not know what happened to the rest of the people that pulled in behind us? But when you're in the military, you have a mission, you have a duty, and you have to stick to it whether you like it or not. I really did not want to be in Iraq. I'd rather be in Turkey. But Iraq is where Uncle Sam sent me, and I had to do what I had to do. Well, the part that I don't talk about too often, but I talk about it more now because it's very intriguing to people, is that concept of no women on the front lines. That all gets thrown out the window when you land in country. And because I was stupid when I was 18 and I volunteered for everything, I ended up being a gunner on a truck. So you have this skinny little girl behind a 50 cal and a Mark 19. If you don't know what that is, Google it and you'll remember me tomorrow. And there was 4 girls in our unit that qualified on multiple weapons. So they would rotate us out the same way they would do the men. So you had 4 women that were either behind a Mark 19 or a 50 cal weapon while in country. And you get the dirty looks, because first of all, the men there really don't want their women to do anything. So to see hair coming out the back of that Kevlar, but you're behind a high-power weapon, you get nasty looks until you kind of turn it toward them, and then they scatter. So you got to do what you got to do. But like I said, it was a really good experience. It taught me a lot. It made me grow up really fast. I was lucky enough to be 23 when I left. We had 18-year-olds that were crying for their moms, but we had to be there and comfort them because everybody's story was so different. And we came home, we all came home different. Some of us react differently to things. Some of us don't have any type of reaction, but that's the life we live when we sign that line. So it's taken me a very long time to open up about my military service. My husband would say, do you guys do a veterans discount? And they said, oh yes, sir, thank you. And he was like, don't thank me, thank her. She's the one, I'm not crazy, she's crazy. She the one who did it. But my husband tries to bring that out of me, and now that I actually work for the VA, I get to spend time with vets all day. That's all I do. I mean, you couldn't pay me enough to do, well, you can pay me enough to do it. But it's a very good job because I feel like I'm with my people, and that piece that I sometimes miss of wearing the uniform, I get that every day at work. So that's a little bit of my story. I know I skipped a lot, but I want to hear this story right here, so I'm going to pass the mic.
That was a great story. I'd like to introduce you to Grace Ricci Bergman. She's my mother. And I told her that I would speak for her because I wasn't sure she would want to do it, come today. Then this morning we were talking and she said, oh, I wouldn't have minded doing it. I thought, oh, darn. But at any rate, I'm going to do it for her. You have to put up with me. She was born on December 3rd, 1915 in Philadelphia. And her family moved soon after to Lansdale, Pennsylvania, where she grew up. She was the third of 10 children. She graduated from Hatfield High School. No, she graduated from Hatfield School. Hatfield School was one school all the way through, okay? Pardon, one grade, yeah, all the way through. In 1933 with honors. Just after her graduation, her family moved back into Philadelphia, and she went to Strayer Business School, and then worked in a real estate office as a receptionist and as a typist. She was a civic-minded New Philadelphian. My grandparents were immigrants. They instilled in their children that they should give back. And so all of their children were that way. And the ones that are still alive are still that way. So Grace, my mother, established a club of young women called the Colopongo, which means Circle of Friends, in the area where she lived in West Oak Lane. The club collected food and other donations for needy people who were affected by the Depression and helped them in any other ways that they could. During this period, my mother met my father, and they became engaged on December 7th, 1941. That was poor planning. At any rate, both of them knew that Fred would be drafted, and they decided to wait until after the war was over to marry. My dad served in the Army in both Africa and Europe. As the war went on, my mother decided that she needed to do more. She didn't tell her parents, but she decided to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. And she served from August 1943 till December 7th, 1945.
The end of the war?
Yeah, well, the end of the war. At that time when you went in, you served for the duration. So I always say that had the war not been over, I wouldn't have been born, because she was already there, and she couldn't have gotten out, like you couldn't. Now, she served, her boot camp was in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and they had the same exact boot camp as the men did at the time, except for they didn't teach them how to shoot the guns. So, yeah, so she was happy about that. And so then she was assigned to Headquarters Marine Corps in Arlington, which I believe now is Fort Myers in Arlington, Virginia. And so I'll tell you a story about when they walked in, since you told such interesting stories. But when they walked into their Headquarters Marine Corps, they lined them up, the women up in the back, to go in to take the typing positions. There were all men in the typing positions at that time. They told the men to get up and go out the other side. Those men were all going to the South Pacific, okay? And then the women filed in and took the typing jobs. Some of those men were injured. Many of them, there of course were many that were killed, but some of those men came back to eventually work for my mother. And don't let me forget to tell you a story about the end of the war, okay? At the very end, okay? But anyway, she was a staff sergeant over a large office of Marines that maintained personnel records of the Marines serving all over the world. Her immigrant parents were very proud of her and her pilot brother, who was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. When she was, so let me tell you the story then about what happened just at the very end of the war at this point. VJ Day, everybody was really excited about victory over Japan because the war was going to be over. And so they let all the civilians go home. However, they didn't let the military people go home. And my mother was really unhappy about that because she thought, particularly these men who had been shot and injured in the war, they should be the first ones to go home. So she told the people in her group and just to sit there with their hands folded, because she couldn't tell them they could go home. But she would have been court-martialed, so she told them just to sit there with their hands folded, and they did. And the big Mahafs kept going by, and the major kept going by and looking, and I guess he was trying to figure out what to do. Finally, the word came down that they were all dismissed, and I think my mother got the military dismissed on that day. That I was really glad to hear that she had done that. I was very proud. When my mother was finally discharged from the Marine Corps, she married her longtime fiance, and she became a homemaker and had me. And then my parents enjoyed 46 years together before my dad died in 1994. She is the oldest living female Marine veteran in the state of Pennsylvania. In 2015, she was 100 years old. And my cousins decided they should do something special for her. So they had a plaque placed at the Women in Military Service for America Memorial in Arlington, Virginia, in her honor. And it took them 2 years to put it there, but you know how government is. Anyway, so we went down to see it, and Mother was very pleased with that. There were 20,000 Marine women in World War II, which, to tell you the truth, I didn't think there were that many. You think that was a lot?
At that time.
Well, yeah, in that time, because they were the first ones, you know. And I guess you could say she was a pioneer. So that's her story, unless she has something she wants to add.
No, after your story.
Yeah. Yeah, your story. That was really great because
Very interesting.
it really was. And I was saying to them beforehand that we went to the Women in Military Service for America Memorial when it first opened, when they dedicated it. And what was so exciting for my mother and for me was to see all of the women in high-ranking positions by the time that rolled around. And that was about 15 or 20 years ago, I think, that we went to that. So we've come a long way, baby. Right? Okay. You're welcome. If anybody has any questions they wanted to ask my mother, they can.
I don't know what
But
it said.
what was the difference between a WAC and a WAVE and a woman Marine?
Oh, we all served in different
Capacities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
different groups.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Marines were not the same.
Never are.
And there are a lot of waves, and I've called a few of them. In our area, they call them the Keystone Waves, and they still meet and get together around the Navy Yard. So I think that's awesome. Yeah,
That's
the
really-
Keystone Waves.
that's really
There's not
cool.
that many of them, but there's still a few of them in the Philadelphia area that still meet. So yeah,
Well, there's very few of us left.
right.
As a matter of fact, I don't know
Well, there's none in Pennsylvania. So I can tell you that.
When I was in the Marine Corps back in 68 to 72, maybe inappropriate, women Marines were called BAMs.
Yes. My mother knows that.
Okay.
The women Marines were called BAMs when he was in the service,
Yes.
68 to 72. And they were during World War II as well.
Yes. And you said you went to Lejeune? Did you go to Paris Island?
You went to Camp
I
Lejeune.
went to Camp Lejeune for my
Have you
basic
visited Paris Island at all?
No, we never went there. Why, should we go there?
To visit.
Huh? I know.
Well,
but-
that's what, when I went in, that's where we started at Paris Island, then we went to Lejeune, and then we went,
No, they just sent her to Lejeune. It took 22 hours to go down on the train. And because they kept having to pull over to let the other trains through, I guess that had to do with the war effort. And she was pretty tired and dirty by the time she got there.
So the Marine Corps didn't know what to do when they first started recruiting women Marines and African Americans, where Paris Island is traditionally for every male Marine east of the Mississippi, and San Diego's for every male Marine west of the Mississippi. But now, every woman Marine in the entire country goes to Paris Island. And speaking about rifles, since, a Marine, we don't call them guns, we call them rifles. Every woman qualifies the same as a man from 500 yards away. We can hit somebody in the head with a round. So every woman has the same rifle training as every male Marine. We shoot at a shoulder silhouette, which is basically you're aiming for a headshot.
But she was glad she didn't have to.
See, that was the only thing I was afraid of if I joined, because I did not tell my mother or father anybody what I was going to do, because they never, nobody around me ever heard of any woman going into service, especially the Marine Corps. And so I just went and I presented myself and I signed up, and they.
Why did you choose the Marines?
Why did you choose the Marines? Do you want
Because nobody in the family was in the Marine Corps. I had a brother who was an airline pilot.
No,
As a matter of fact, he
not
was
an airline pilot.
He was.
He was awarded the
He was
distinguished.
awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for his work in the war, and he was in the same war as I was, but I didn't go into. I'd never be that.
Well, the other thing, they had a higher standard. Yeah, in terms of their weight, their height, they had to be a certain height. In terms of how long their hair was, I mean, they really had a high bar, and she wanted to meet it.
In 1943, they said, okay, you're 5'6", you can join the Marine Corps. This man joined the Marine Corps, and it's history. Became one of our greatest fighting Marines.
That's good.
So,
That's wonderful.
yeah, we've always, you're right on target about the standards. But in time of war, they will say, okay, we'll take you if you're under 5'8".
I will say that if it hadn't been a war, I would have enjoyed being in the Marine Corps, because I met many lovely people,
From all over the country.
and I kept friends for years. As a matter of fact, I just lost one woman that I served with. That was a few years ago. And now I have nobody except me.
Were any women sent overseas in any, as nurses, I'm guessing?
Well, yes, as nurses, but you know what? My cousin sent me an article that B. Arthur did the same type of work as my mother. Yeah, B. Arthur from Golden Girls. Okay. Pardon? Yes, she certainly was. And she served in England. And that surprised me. And Mother really, she joined the service to see the world. And they sent her to Washington. She wasn't, and she kept asking to go to San Diego, and they wouldn't send her. And but yes, there were some.
What kind of work did you do there?
She worked in personnel. She kept the records of the men and where they were and what happened to them every day.
Every day, we got a long.
Oh, what was it called? I know what it was called, but I can't.
Muster roll.
Muster rolls. Yeah. Joe.
I want to ask Chanel a question. I remember when the Iraq War first started. I remember the first prisoners of war happened to be 2 female truck drivers.
Really?
Were you aware of that at the time, or were you there at the time when that happened?
Yeah, they made us very aware of that situation, and we actually had to go into a lot of the towns where their breakdown occurred, and so yeah, we were on high alert. You know, before you leave, they tell you we're going to give you this, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you this, and you get 0 when you get there. You know, and one of the things we thought we were going to have was MP and air support, because that's what they teach you, that this is what's going to happen when you go on convoys, because we carry highly sensitive materials, so they say. But we had no other like security forces with us. So that's why when they said, well, you qualified on this, we're going to rotate you and you're going to cover your own security.
You were the security force.
Exactly. So you had 4 females as security forces with some of the other guys in the unit. But we were on high alert for ambushes and things of that nature, because that's what they were known to do. They would attack the convoys and try to take whatever we had on our vehicles. We had a great dynamic, and it was scary at first, because when I mentioned how they said if we call your name, you're going. They took 22 of us from my original unit and put us with a whole new unit of people that we've never met before, never seen before, never drove a truck with, never trained with, and we're like, we literally walked in and it was like the record completely stopped and we're all staring at each other. And the first sergeant's just looking at us and we're looking at him, and he goes, okay, well, you guys are going to war together, figure it out. And that's what we had to do. And what we thought was an awkward moment, because the 22 of us stuck together because we had been together for 6 years. And then we had these new guys like wanting to come in, and we were like, stay over there, we're gonna drive with each other. And the first sergeant said, nah, I can't do this, I gotta mix you up. And that's what they did. And you know, we smoked cigars together and kept each other alive, and it was what it was. A lot of the females that ended up in Iraq, they picked some of the strongest females from our unit, and they had some pretty strong females too, so they really didn't mess with us, especially when we get together, because we can be catty, but we can be strong at the same time. So the guys never really messed with. They took care of us. We had some crazy circumstances going on in the desert, rape cases, things like that. Females, we couldn't go to the bathroom alone. We couldn't go shower alone. A male had to escort us. And our men, I can honestly say, took care of us. They will stand outside that shower until we're done. If we need anything, they make somebody radio it in. Hey, can you bring some soap? I gotta stay here with Burke or whatever. But they took very good care of us and treated us like wives, mothers, sisters, daughters, whatever they had to do. So it was a great dynamic for me, as far as my experience was. They sent us to Fort Hood to decompress, whatever. I still don't understand what that means. And I'm gonna be honest with you, everything they said was like, wah, 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 wah. Everybody was like, why are we in Texas? We wanna go home. Why are we in Texas? We wanna go home. You know, you tell us we're going home, but you ship us to Texas. So it was like, can you speed this up, hurry up, let's get back to the East Coast. And when we came back to the East Coast, it was like, you guys can't work for 90 days. We need to talk to the people that want to re-enlist and the people that want to get out. And my situation, I really wanted to go to jump school. I was still stupid. And I was dead set on jumping out of planes. I'm like, I'm gonna jump out of a plane, then I'm going to officer candidate school. And a female major said, well, you might be going back overseas. I'm like, okay, so that's 50-50. Like, what am I or am I not? Like, can I not go to jump school? And she's like, we cannot reassign you to jump school if you re-enlist because your unit is going back and we don't know where you're going. So I said, no, thank you. I said, I can't get shot at every day again for another year. I'm burnt out. It's hot over there. I'm malnutrition. I can't do it. I can't do it. So I signed as big as I could and got in trouble because I literally drew my name in bubble letters across the whole paper and made her reprint every sheet that the Army makes you sign. And I did it again the right way, and I got out. But coming home, we had no real welcome wagon because we were like some of the first units to go. I mean, we were bombing Baghdad while I was driving through it. So we were there fairly early. So we didn't really have a lot of the welcome wagon that they have now. We didn't have any yellow ribbon, or there was no spousal support for those who were married. And they just told you, you know, you can't work for 90 days, you have to check in. So I had to go back to Fort Eustis and then come home. Back to Fort Eustis, come home. Then it turned to phone calls, and then that was it. It was like, you're a civilian now, go do whatever you have to do. So I had to go back to college for my graduating semester because I decided to double major, stupid, and ended up in Iraq. So I'm 24 years old, going back to college with 18-year-olds that I'm not that much older than they are, but it's old from what I just came through. And my college actually put me in a room by myself, which I said, no, you will thank me later. Don't give me a roommate. And it worked out, but it was weird. I didn't like a lot of the same things I liked before I left. I used to be the life of the party, as you can tell. And I would be in the middle of the dance floor, like getting everybody all hype and yeah, shots, and that would be me. When I came home, I was like, I'm not going, you go, I'll pick you up if you're drunk. So it just, the whole dynamic of my life changed. And combat makes you a different person, and the reactions are different for many, but I know I felt totally out of place. I felt like I did not belong. Only thing that I did was play basketball, and I found a league in Delaware. So I would drive all the way to Delaware from Plymouth Meeting for practices and to play basketball because that was the one thing that kept me going. And I played, and I found out I was almost 6 months pregnant, and I was still playing basketball, and I had to quit. So then it's back to, what do I do now? What do I do now? But the baby comes, and that helps a little bit, so.
Yeah, you were busy then.
That was very busy then. No more basketball, but busy. And then another one came in, busy. So my time to get out was June of 2003. I was already in Iraq, and they already warned us. They had a list of us in the unit that was supposed to ETS or get out, and they already warned us. They said, you can't get out until we're done here. So when we came home, the few of us on that short list, we had the option, get out or stay in. And when she said, you're going back, I said, no, thanks. So I got out.
And that was the National Guard you were in the whole time?
Yes, ma'am.
If you could give advice to a female enlisting in the military now, what would you tell her?
My cousin who was with me, we were together the whole time in Iraq. They just had us in 2 different platoons, but we high-five and want to keep it moving. Her daughter just signed into the National Guard. And she called me and said, I don't think I want to let her do it. Look what we went through, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, did you think about the fact that maybe she wants to do what mommy did? And my cousin never thought of it that way. She just had the mommy hat and was like, no, no, no. And she never figured that her daughter looked up to her as a role model and said, if my mom can do it, I can do it. So she looks at it differently. I have a niece who just enlisted as well, and she kept asking a million questions, so I knew where she was going with it. So what I will say is this: if you want to go into the military, study it. Figure out exactly which branch you want to do. Don't let other people pick for you, and figure out the type of life you want to live for yourself. I got into Guard first because I wanted to do college first and then go active duty. So that was my goal. It didn't work out that way, but that was my goal for myself when I was 17 years old. So try to have some sort of goal and know what you want to do, and if you want to make a career out of it, or if you just want to get the 4 years of experience.
And being in the service is a great experience. I wouldn't change it. But of course, I was glad that I didn't have to shoot any guns or anything like that, because
I was going to add that.
that part was not my. But there's lots of things to do in the service, and you learn a lot.
Yeah, and the good thing is you have on an Air Force sweatshirt, don't you? I scanned the room. That's just another problem I have. I notice everything. Women can be pilots. There's a lot of female pilots right now. I acquired a few jumpsuits while I was in Iraq, and I like just to put them on and feel like I'm a pilot. But females can be pilots now, and I think that is so awesome. It can lead to other things. I mean, we had a female pilot that became a NASA astronaut. You know what I mean? So
Really?
it's endless what you can do in the military now.
Yeah.
So if that's what you want to do, go for it, girl.
If you had to do it all over again, would you? Would you hesitate? No.
I was stupid. Didn't I tell you that 3 times? I was stupid when I was 17. I said, my mom of all people can do it? Boom, I'm signing that line. I'm going to outdo my mom. You know, my mom was athletic too. My mom ran track, I played basketball, and I felt like she can do it, I can do it better. And she didn't want me to. She was like, I'll pay for you to go to college. And I'm like, I want to do it myself. You did it yourself. I want to do it myself. It was just a little competition thing I had going on. I felt like if my mom could struggle and do what she had to do, then I can do it too. So I wouldn't change a thing. I wish it was Turkey and not Iraq, but that's out of my control, so yeah.
Okay, she wanted to know if you had a do-over, would you do it over again?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Not even a hesitation.
No doubt.
No.
However, she didn't encourage me to do it.
You know that part.
I didn't say I wanted to do it either, but I mean, I was allowed to do what I wanted to do. But, there was no encouragement there.
Well, let me tell you, you've been a wonderful audience. And it was a pleasure just to sit here and
Talk to you.
And talk.
If you notice, she really does like to talk. I should have let her talk. The Veterans Administration cannot have been any nicer, and I think the citizens of our country could not have been any better to these people, like my mother. But there are some people that have maybe, say a friend of mine just died of Agent Orange from being over in Vietnam, and I don't know how good they were about following up on that. Those types of things they need to do. They need to follow the veterans and make sure that they didn't pick up anything when they were in these foreign countries.
As far as support, I would say, if you know of a vet in your neighborhood, it doesn't mean you have to go knock on their door and say, thank you for your service, and give them a hug, because we're going to be like, what the hell's wrong with this lady? But I would say just if you see them in church or, out in the community, just saying hi to them, saying, hey, we support you. You don't have to really bring out a marching band. There's some vets in the room, so if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But just knowing that, you are there and you do support is more than enough. As far as being a citizen is concerned. I work for the VA. I work for a nice part of the VA, But we have to do a lot better as far as advocating for veterans in our regions or in our communities. So I think that as working for a federal agency, I think we have to do better first, because from what I gathered from members of the community, you guys are all for us. I mean, I live right around the corner, and I've met some awesome people in the White Marsh, Lafayette Hill area that have been very nice to me. They always say thank you for your service, because my husband is the one who rats me out and tell people I serve. But people are generally nice and welcoming and want to ask a question or hear a story or, just say thank you. I've experienced it more the past 3 years because I do work for the VA and I'm a little more vocal about being a veteran. But when I didn't say anything, I didn't hear it, but that was my own fault. So now when people see me, they do say, oh my God, you're speaking at the library. My husband's friend put this whole thing on Facebook, Chanel's famous, and I'm like, oh my God. So I had friends in California saying, oh my God, you're speaking at a library. I'm like, oh man, it's not that deep. So when people typically find out that you're a vet, it's very comforting, and the communities have been great. So I would say just keep that up. If you know a vet, see a vet, thank them for their service, and that's doing enough. Yeah.
I think the country learned a lesson when the vets came back from Vietnam and they were spat on and disrespected. People didn't realize they didn't want to go to Vietnam. Right. They didn't want to fight. They got drafted.
Yeah.
And I think we've learned a lesson that the soldier's fighting for you.
Yeah.
And you need to respect that and appreciate that.
And I think another piece of that is 9/11 again. 9/11 brought this country together like no other time. So people were more for their sister or for their brother than they were from previous wars because it hit home so hard. So
I think a lot of people are surprised when they hear how many women served in the different capacities, because when people say you were in the Second World War, they just can't imagine that.
yeah.
That a woman was in the Second World War. But there were a lot of us